Ohio State has been amazing in terms of the quarterback spot over the last few years. I mean, guys like Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, Dwayne Haskins, all been first-round picks and stars to come out of Columbus. We also saw 1 year of Kyle McCord, who's now in the NFL by way of a different team, and most recently Will Howard get drafted by the Steelers. Ohio State, though, has to figure out their next option. After losing both Aaron Noland and Devin Brown to the transfer portal, the Buckeyes currently have 3 scholarship options for the 2025 college football season, and in today's video, we're going to do a preview of their quarterback room, and I'm also going to talk about who I think should win the job. This is a pretty highly decorated group of guys, but before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the Ohio State quarterback room. So yeah, they ended up losing both Aaron Noland and Devin Brown to the portal, and Will Howard to graduation. I was a little bit skeptical of Will Howard when he was coming out of Kansas State, and didn't know if he really had what it takes, but he definitely did. He passed for 4,000 yards with 35 touchdowns, and also had 7 more scores on the ground and won a national championship before being drafted in the 6th round by the Steelers. But they will have to replace Howard, and the first guy in line is going to be Lincoln Kienholz. He's a guy who's been on the program for 2 years now, and he grew up in the most unique area of all these guys, and that was South Dakota. There was a misconception that everything has always been easy for Lincoln. Before he became a superstar from Pierre, South Dakota, and one of the top football players in South Dakota football history, he was introduced to the game as a 5th grader just trying to spend time with friends. What's funny is he actually did not like the physicality of the game, and it was his least favorite sport. He had no fun, and he decided to move on to baseball and basketball. But by the time he was entering his 8th grade year, he had committed so much time to travel basketball and baseball that he wanted to hang out with his friends more, and football was a way to do that, ironically. He was actually drawn to the wide receiver position at first, but Pierre's head coach Steve Steele was the first to notice his natural throwing motion in practice and arm strength from baseball. So, eventually they tried him out at quarterback, and he remembers one practice where they had lined up a receiver with Kienholz at quarterback. The guy ran a deep route, and Kienholz fired at 30 yards, which was pretty good for an 8th grader. As a freshman, he was a backup and got some reps, and he was all set up for a sophomore season in which he would be handed the keys. By then, the Governors knew what they were welcoming in Kienholz, but not much else. He was practically their only returning starter, and they built their entire offense around him. Eventually, after the season was over, some thought he had potential to be a college quarterback. His coach said, quote, "I think in South Dakota, our high level traditionally is South Dakota State or North Dakota State, and we definitely saw him going that level." But after his junior season, he ended up blowing up and told his mom, quote, "I think I want to play college football." A few moments later, he got his first offer from an FBS program, and it looked like everything was just very effortless to him. He can make every throw and make it look easy, and at TF Riggs High School, they sent it to Washington head coach Kalen DeBoer, who's also a native of South Dakota, and things would explode. He was quiet and reserved and didn't like the recruiting process, as all 5 days of the week teams would call him, and he eventually had a Final Four of North Dakota State, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Definitely kind of unique. He eventually did pick Washington and was considered a 3-star recruit, but his junior numbers catapulted him. He passed for 3,359 yards and 37 touchdowns with only 6 picks. But he also ran for 1,200 yards and 12 more scores. He ended up having the best senior season in South Dakota high school football history, throwing for a state record 3,422 yards with 46 touchdowns, and he also ran for 1,400 yards and 24 more, averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. After that, his recruitment exploded as he took an official visit to Ohio State and received an offer from the Buckeyes. 2 weeks later, Kienholz decommitted from Washington and committed to the Buckeyes, and after that, he signed his letter of intent. At the time, the last 3 quarterbacks under Ryan Day had been Heisman finalists and first-round picks, but he said, quote, "I think he felt he can earn a starting quarterback job at Ohio State, and that he's the best quarterback in the country." According to 24/7 Sports, Lincoln was a 4-star recruit, the number 11 quarterback, and the 138th best player in the class of 2023. So far, while Lincoln has been at Ohio State, he has not been on the field much, as his first year was when Kyle McCord was there, and despite him not being the same as the other guys, he still was pretty solid and did not give up the starting job. At least until their bowl game. Since Kyle had committed to Syracuse, Devin Brown was now slated to be the starter for their game against Mizzou, and unfortunately, after an early injury, Lincoln was thrusted in against the Tigers. Nobody expected this, and nobody saw this coming, and he struggled. With the weight of the world on his back, he went 6 of 17, and did not have a touchdown or interception, and he just wasn't prepared. In total, he had 111 yards. In 2024, he was once again a backup quarterback, this time stuck behind Julian Sayin and Devin Brown, with their new starter being Will Howard. He did not see the field, but he now enters this year's quarterback battle, and he has the most experience of any quarterback in the room. Granted, it's not a lot, but he has spent 2 full years in this system, has worked his tail off, and according to Ryan Day, it's a 2-man race, and right now many believe he is at the top. Kienholz is an electric player, but he definitely has work to do. Our second guy is clearly third on the depth chart, and that is true freshman quarterback Tavien St. Clair. Growing up in Ohio, St. Clair always loved the Buckeyes, as he said, quote, "I don't know if there was a more loyal fan than me. When I was young, I cried when they lose, and I've always wanted to be a Buckeye." He ended up at Bellefontaine High School, and before his freshman year, he was a skinny kid who was awkward at 6'3", and most could not fathom the idea of him being a freshman phenom. He only knew he loved playing quarterback for his hometown, and this was definitely off the beaten path for big-time college football recruiters. But Tavien St. Clair's football abilities were laced with more promise than he could contemplate, and as a freshman, he ended up finishing with 1,700 yards and 13 touchdowns, which wasn't phenomenal, but pretty decent for a freshman. After the season, Central Michigan decided to give St. Clair his first scholarship offer, and he thought that was it. He could be a MAC-level quarterback, and he felt blessed with such an opportunity. But the news of a sprouting freshman quarterback with a strong arm ended up getting south, as Tennessee's quarterback coach Joey Hazel ended up visiting his high school and thought his future could be bigger than the MAC. Tennessee offered after a throwing session, and Hazel said to St. Clair, quote, "It's officially real. We're offering you a full scholarship, and after this, your life's going to change." It was true. Schools from all over the country lined up to talk to him. During his sophomore season, he completed 71% of his passes for 2,500 yards and 25 touchdowns, which is 4 picks. At this time, he was now a 4-star recruit, and he decided to make his college choice, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They are located just an hour down the road, but they didn't just offer him because he was from Ohio. Head coach Ryan Day doesn't do that. St. Clair said, quote, "Being from a small town like this, I just didn't know if I'd get the recognition." At the time, the last Ohio quarterback to sign with the Buckeyes was Joe Burrow, and they had already passed on guys like Sean Clifford and Drew Aller, and also Ryan Montgomery got an offer, but he ended up going to Georgia. Why Ohio State? Well, St. Clair said, quote, "If I'm at my best, that's all that matters to me, and that's the whole reason I committed there. I feel like they can turn me into the best player that I can be." At the time, he was the number 13 quarterback in the class of 2025, and he chose the Buckeyes over several teams, including Bama, Michigan, Florida, and LSU. Apparently, I didn't know this, many questioned the Buckeyes taking him. They didn't think he was good enough due to his low recruiting ranking, but once again, Ryan Day showed he's a quarterback whisperer, as he always finds guys who shoot up the rankings, like what happened to Aaron Noland back in 2024. In his first game of the 2023 season, as an Ohio State Buckeyes commit, he ended up throwing for 5 touchdowns and broke the career passing touchdown record in the process. It was kind of cool. He said there was so much promise of being a future Buckeye, and that this brought a ton of attention and expectations to him. He dominated and was fun to watch, and said he got that confidence and swagger from Ohio State as he watched them. He was no stranger, as he went to a lot of their games and was always visiting on campus. He was described as a pro-style quarterback, standing at over 6'4" and nearly 230 pounds, and eventually he was bumped up to the #1 recruit in the country according to Rivals. Pretty dang good. 24/7 Sports, though, said he was a 5-star, the number 3 quarterback and the 4th best player in the class of 2025. A couple years ago, when he talked to Ohio State's quarterback coach Corey Dennis, St. Clair said, quote, "He told me to take over the game and be the man out there at all times, and that eyes are going to be on me now on for the rest of my life." So yeah, he ended up enrolling early at Ohio State, but he's been no stranger as he's been there so many times, and he definitely knows the coaching staff very well. But he's definitely going to be starting out third on the depth chart, as he just doesn't have the same amount of reps, and also he was not as good in the spring game. He ended up having 2 interceptions in their spring game, and while that isn't a deciding factor, he looks definitely to be behind both Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sayin, and Ryan Day said it's a 2-man battle. St. Clair, though, has ridiculous potential, and I think will be a factor down the road. Last but not least, we now need to talk about the main guy, and that is going to be Julian Sayin. Right now, we don't exactly know if he's going to win the job, but I presume that he probably will be the guy in the end over Kienholz. Growing up across the country in California, he spent time in Solana Beach before ending up in Carlsbad. He had a brother by the name of Aiden, and they would spend all their days by the water. Aiden was formerly a starting quarterback for Penn and was one of the top quarterbacks in the FCS, and his sister Bailey played soccer at the University of Chicago, so these guys were high achievers both academically and when it came to sports. He said his dad taught him everything and challenged him, as he would apparently bench both him and his brother and let other kids start over them just to make them earn it. At the time, his brother started to take football very seriously and began with a trainer in 7th grade, and the little 4th grade Julian decided to tag along and eventually had a meteoric rise himself as he gained an offer from Florida State in 8th grade from then offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham. That's kind of hard to believe. Obviously, it wasn't a real offer as they can't actually do that, but it kind of counted. Julian did not stop progressing, as once he got to Carlsbad High School, his head coach kept him on the straight and narrow, and he kept working harder and harder. His older brother admitted that Julian actually picked up their offense faster than he did, and he saw that happening in real time when he was a senior and Julian was a freshman. As I said, Sayin ended up sitting behind his brother's freshman year, but then became the starting quarterback entering his sophomore season and finished the year with 2,800 yards and 34 touchdowns to go along with 5 picks. He started to blow up and was named one of the top quarterbacks in the country and started dominating at camps. As a junior, he then passed for 2,700 yards and 27 touchdowns, and now it was time for him to make his college choice. He always idolized Nick Saban in the Alabama program, and that was the only school he visited, so he decided to go there. He chose them over Georgia and LSU. He was a prodigy-type quarterback in the 2024 class, and he was seen as a light-hearted, dry-humored person who didn't take himself too seriously. He even brought one of his quarterback trainers with him on a family vacation to Mexico. In his final season, Sayin ended up completing nearly 76% of his passes and also had 2,400 yards and 24 touchdowns. On3 sort of compared him to CJ Stroud, and while they aren't identical, he said they were quite similar, and other scouts called him Tony Romo. According to 24/7 Sports, Sayin was a 5-star recruit, the number 3 quarterback and the 20th best player in the class of 2024. He would arrive at Alabama, waiting behind guys like Austin Mack, Ty Simpson, and Jalen Milroe for a shot at greatness when something huge happened. He couldn't control what happened just a few weeks into his college career, as after 17 years and 6 national championships, Nick Saban decided to retire from Alabama, and Sayin had been committed there for 434 days. As I said, Alabama was the only school he took an official visit to, and he visualized himself playing for Saban. His parents were about to buy a house in Tuscaloosa, and it sort of just blew up his world, his mom said. After Julian joined the Crimson Tide for their college football semifinal trip, the opportunity to play for Bama was done. Julian did not put his name into the transfer portal until January 19th, and he decided to get off social media because of all the Alabama hate and all the schools trying to get after him. He didn't return to social media for months apparently. Ohio State was one of the final schools that Julian and his family spoke to while he was in the portal, and Julian had been to Columbus just once before when he was a high school underclassman. Still though, there was some familiarity, and he just really liked Ryan Day and his track record. Ryan Day apparently told him, quote, he said, "It's not going to be easy. You have a very full room, but we believe in you, and we believe in what you can bring." As he arrived at Ohio State, he quickly kept working harder and harder, mastering the playbook and apparently going up the depth chart. He ended up passing Aaron Nolan, Devin Brown, and Lincoln Kienholz on the depth chart, but he was obviously not going to play as a freshman because of Will Howard. This was mostly due to his work ethic and mechanics, and national recruiting analyst Greg Biggins said, quote, Sayin has excellent pocket mobility and short area quickness. He's very accurate to all 3 levels of the field, has a tight release, and throws exceptionally well off platform and with different arm angles. Many say that Sayin won't necessarily beat you with his physical measurables, but will instead beat you with his mind, his arm, his mechanics, and his ability to just go out and dominate. Apparently, the Ohio State quarterback battle is a 2-horse race right now between Kienholz and Sayin, and Ryan Day indicated that Kienholz was slightly leading before the spring game, but Sayin performed better in the spring game. Honestly, Sayin was a 5-star recruit for a reason, and based on reading and researching, it seems like this guy is a film guru, he's one of the hardest workers on the planet, and he's also very humble. I think I'm going to pick Julian Sayin to win this quarterback battle, and I honestly think he should be the guy for the job. I've been a huge fan of Lincoln Kienholz for years, as I love his story, and I even made a video about him a couple of years ago. But honestly, I think in the long run, Sayin is the best bet, he's the better player, and I think has the best chance of getting them to another national championship. But Kienholz is no slouch, and Tavien St. Clair will be ready when his time comes. But what do you guys think? If you're an Ohio State fan, who do you think should win this quarterback battle? What are your thoughts on these different guys in the room? And what other school should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.